welcome to another edition of Defo on 5 with Mike Lubie Lubitz. I'm Jeff DeForest, and very happy to have you with us for what we usually call a Peel Yourself Off the Mat Monday. But too much happened over the weekend not to be super excited if you're part of the sporting world. I have to admit this, though, on the pop culture front, Lubie. And how are you, by the way? How was your weekend? Were you okay?
I am living. I'm rolling along. The wife is out of town, getting back, I guess, today or so. I'm okay. I survived. Got to watch a lot of sports. How was your weekend?
Oh, very good. Very nice. I had a wonderful Saturday. I didn't do much yesterday. Kind of burnt out. If I have a ton of activity on one day, all of a sudden now, and maybe that's a byproduct of crossing, I don't want to say over the Rainbow Bridge there, but getting closer and closer to meeting my maker there. And the Grim Reaper is calling. Hey, Defo, only a few more years. But I feel good, and I got a little exercise in. That was about it. Other than that, yesterday didn't do much of anything. Watched a lot of sports. Watched myself getting crushed. But the big news, of course, was the bracketology, and then the Oscars. And I didn't realize how far out of it I was when it came to modern day pop culture. All of my references are deemed to be arcane. Talking about movies that were made before Citizen Kane, for that matter. Hey, you remember that scene, don't you? Yeah. Jimmy Stewart was in there. Yeah, he was locked in that box and he invented the carbine rifle. I'm going back to Rain Out Theater, but I knew nothing of Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I would have not been able to tell you what that was before I was sitting on the throne yesterday, and I happened to read a little Oscars preview in my beloved New York Post. Had you heard of this movie? I mean, ran away with every award last night. Nominated for like 11 Oscars, I think, won 7 of them. Took down everything, and you could see the pattern the way it was going. Did you watch any of this, Lubie, by any chance? Or were you so absorbed in women's bracketology that you are trying to find a way to play against South Carolina in the women's bracket?
I just haven't watched any of these movies in years. After the fact, I end up catching up with a lot of the Oscar movies. What's the movie? I don't even know what movie you're talking about that did so well.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I never heard of it. I you know what? If you asked me if that was, in the running for short film or, animation, or if it was a television series that was playing on some obscure network that, you have to really dig deep to find, I know. I mean, I would have thought it was less popular than the original telecast of the Live Tour, right? But nonetheless, big movie, and I ran away with almost all of the awards. It was kind of sad watching the other people, knowing that they were going to get trounced. It was like watching Brian Flores' first year with the Miami Dolphins, where, at least in the first 9 games or whatever, 7 games, you knew they were going to get trounced every week. And you would find a ray of hope in the fact that, you know what, they got a little closer this time. They only lost by 30. I tell you what, you take a couple of plays out of there, and this is a 10-win team. Okay, great. Speaking of which, I know everybody's going to be immersed in bracketology. We were getting some coaching from our good friend, former South Florida Sun Sentinel sports writer, the great Jim Sarney, is saying we really have to step up our game. He's trying to coach us up on this Defo on 5 thing. And naturally thinks that we are sexist and misogynistic because we hardly ever dive deeply into any of the women's sports. Now, I would say that that's an unfair criticism because we do talk a lot of women's tennis on our various programs because the women are, on a par in terms of producing excitement with the men and playing at a very high level of competence and efficiency in tennis. I mean, it's not the same game, but it's pretty darn close. John McEnroe would take exception with that, right? Remember? He said like the number 150th guy in the world would beat Martina Navratilova, spank her all night long. Or Chris Everett. Yeah, that might have been true at the time.
Yes.
I would think that the top men's players would still dominate the top women's players if they went head-to-head, but the game itself is more of a parallel than, say, women's college basketball is to men's college basketball, although that gap is narrowing. Would you agree with that?
I think women's basketball is
it's a different type of game, a little bit different
than it once was. But
yes.
I can't say. Look, I'm not trying to be sexist. I don't know. You call me whatever you want. There's a clear difference in the 2 games. I'm sorry if that bothers you, the Kate Fagans of the world. It just is different. The men,
she was trying to tell us that Rebecca Lobo was the female equivalent of Will Chamberlain. I don't think so.
No, well, she didn't try to tell us that much because we can get into it. The professor was saying that's what she says on other platforms. For us, I agreed with everything she said. If she wants to take it to the next step, and the women are no, they're not. It's not the same. The game's boring as shit compared to the men's game. It's a different game. It's like LeBron making fun of the Bob Cousy. Like watching women's basketball now is watching the men in the 60s.
Yeah.
It is. It's
See a little weave going at the top of the key
yes,
there.
there
Nobody ever penetrates. After about an hour and a half when they had no shot clock, somebody hoists one that looks ugly. All right. Well, we didn't mean to get into that. I didn't mean to get into a total demeaning of the
I'm not
women's
trying to
college
denounce
basketball game.
it.
Very exciting. South Carolina, undefeated.
Yay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go, girls. But, while the world is, filling up with bracketology and, we all know this is the year of the cleaning lady. You have the 4 number 1 seeds. There didn't seem to be a lot of turmoil about who got in and who got out. I didn't hear a lot of controversy about, oh, my God, can you believe they gave him a number 2? There wasn't a whole heck of a lot of that. But it was eclipsed, that the whole bracketology thing here locally, by the fact that, and this is an interesting question, Lubie, and I don't know that I have the answer to it, because it does seem like at least a couple of decades would have to factor in. How many years can you go making blockbuster deals and still be mediocre? If this doesn't work, nothing's going to work for the Miami Dolphins. Would you agree with that? They acquired Jalen Ramsey from the Rams. Jalen Ramsey, of course, made a big name for himself in Jacksonville, went to the Rams, helped them win a Super Bowl. I guess from a sabermetrics performance-wise last year, he kind of tailed off a little bit, but not enough to make you think the cat can't play. 6 straight Pro Bowls. The guy's only 28 years old. Yes, he's making a lot of money, but he now formulates what, at least on paper, Lubie, is a very dynamic duo in the secondary at the cornerback position. Who the hell is going to score on the Dolphins? What do you think Josh Allen is going to do when he's thinking, hey, who do I throw to? Xavier Howard? Or do I go the other way with Jalen Ramsey, who's also very good? I mean, if this guy was a tennis player, he'd be poaching at the net because he comes into play quite a bit. Although I was surprised to see that Ramsey only had 4 interceptions last year, and that tied his career high. I saw this guy getting to many more balls and possibly reaching double digits in interceptions, but only 4 is career high. Yet he seems to be involved in virtually every play, and I would imagine that's a byproduct of nobody going in his direction. So,
Yes.
who can I turn to? It's the old Robert Goulet thing. If you're facing the Miami Dolphins and you have to go against those 2 corners, what do you make of that? I mean, they got him for a song. Basically,
Yes.
I would imagine the Rams dumped him because they had to get rid of the salary. They're in a rebuilding mode, even though Sean McVay says, no, we're not rebuilding.
They're rebuilding.
And the Dolphins have been rebuilding since 1999, right? Gonna party like it was 1990. They're like a Prince song. 1999 was the last time they were really extremely relevant because they had, oh, Danny Boy, Dan Marino there. So what do you think? I mean, every time you're thinking, wow, I don't know about this team, that they do something now. And this makes you think that, maybe they are doing something that will take them in the right direction. What did you make of this whole Jalen Ramsey acquisition?
The fact that they didn't give up anything of much value, and the fact that they're in this mode where they're moving money around to make contracts of less weight
Yes.
than a steal, and the fact that they now went from being way over the cap to way, even with Ramsey, they're way under, where they can still address the offensive line, because that's the problem. Yes, their secondary after injuries was an issue, but what was the real issue is still their offensive line. They're counting on a guy that's always hurt in Armstead, and then they have 2 spots that really aren't manned by anyone worth anything. So the offensive line is a thing that they need to fix, but from what I've heard, they are aware of that. They just couldn't pass up on this. Like, Howard's numbers dipped because 1, he was hurt, and 2, he had no help. And that's the same thing with Ramsey last year. That Rams defense went from being one of the top 3 or 4 in the league to a disaster because they had once they lost Von Miller, which is funny, Wagner was supposed to, as a linebacker, supposed to pick up the loss of Von Miller. He didn't. So they were not able to get pressure on the quarterback at all. Well, if that's the case, then the cornerbacks are just out there running on an island, and eventually you get to them. What's funny is Ramsey had a bad year last year. He went from being rated number 1 overall to number 3. So all these people that are writing this narrative that Ramsey has fallen off have no idea what they're talking about. He just got no help. And that's the other thing is with Fangio's defense, it's different than Boyer's. So people are like, well, I thought they were going to focus on the rest of the defense. They are. Ramsey's not just a corner. Like, Ramsey plays linebacker. Ramsey rushes the passer. Ramsey moves to safety. Like, Ramsey is actually
He's a tough mofo, I would have to say. One tough mofo.
Yes.
And it's good to have him on your team. The sabermetrics have him only behind in terms of whatever numerology and permutations they were using to come up with this. only behind Sauce Gardner, the rookie for the Jets, who was sensational last year, rookie of the year defensively, and Patrick Surtain Jr., who, of course, we are familiar with because of his father, but the kid's a terrific player
He's great.
and had a great season last year. So good acquisition there. NCAA. I don't know that I'm ready to fill out my bracket yet. The Miami Hurricanes get a number 5 seed. That was widely anticipated. I have to give some credit to these bracketologists. They kind of had the thing covered, did they not?
Yeah, this
Terry
year. Yeah.
Plum is in there, and there's Joe Lunardi.
Yeah, yeah.
They sort of had a pretty good vision of what was going to happen, where teams were going to be. That's why I didn't hear even Jay Billis wasn't screaming about the fact that Duke got in there as what, a number 4 seed?
I think they're
No,
five.
5 seed
They're
also.
both five. Yeah, they're both 5.
Now this is kind of weird because you're going to look at Drake and think they made a nice cupcake, did they not? Drake's Cakes. But how are they as a basketball team? And again, it's a very dangerous spot, right? Where are the upsets? Where do you first look for the upsets? You look at 5 versus 12, and you have to give consideration to the 12th seed because we've seen it any number of times. And you also have to consider Mr. Gagging Milk of Magnesia Chalk that the number 1 seeds rarely, I think it's only one time that they've made it in 2008. All 4 number 1 seeds made it to the Final Four. So if you're just going to take the higher seed as you fill out your brackets, go ahead and give your money to the cleaning lady right now because she's going to be betting this thing and trying to make what's going to happen with the field out by, colors, names, towns, whatever, and a very different set of considerations. So I mean, I don't know, and I have a tendency to do this, right? I mean, don't you have to? If your inner soul is telling you and whispering to you, if that voice in your head is saying, "Play the chalk, play the lower seed," you really ought to consider just bowing out of the whole thing and not even watching a single game when they tip it off noon on Thursday. But Canes and Drake. Drake was a team that was mentioned to us by our guy Scott Spinelli, the coach, a former coach that we've had on. He has a podcast, very knowledgeable about college basketball, at least so it seems. And this was his like sleeper team, Drake. So watch out, Hurricane fans, because the Canes were not playing as well at the end of the season, quite as well as they were at different points during the year, especially early in the year when they rattled off like 12 straight wins and looked like, absolutely an eye-opening team that made you think that they had a chance to make some noise in spite of the fact that they don't really have an overwhelmingly dominant player on that squad.
Oh, and I think that
Everybody
caught up
pitches
with
in.
them.
Yeah.
Look, and then we saw it in the game versus Duke. I didn't even. We've talked about a lot of guys on the Kings. We never talked about their one big, which scares the crap out of me. How do you have one big?
Yeah.
He got hurt in the first 2 minutes of the game, and that was it.
That hurt him.
Then you
Yes.
can talk about the refs, and that's fine. I watched the game. The refs weren't like overly horrendous. Eventually Duke was just able to outlast them. They couldn't if you can't rebound, like, at some point that's going to catch up with you. And by the second half,
Yeah.
it did, and it scares me. Like we've talked with Larry Nagan, I'm going to try and get him on this week. I'm happy for them, but that was eye opening. Like,
Duke really, I thought came on. The professor argued with me on our morning show, and he said, he was laughing, mocking me about the fact that, it seemed like a consensus favored Duke in that game. And they weren't favored by 3.5 points in the ball game. It was competitive, but you thought that Duke had control of it most of the time. And Duke appeared to come into not only that game, but comes into the NCAA tournament on a much better role than the University of Miami, which looks like it has to kind of right the ship a little bit. And Drake may be a more imposing challenge than a lot of people would anticipate, just based on the fact that you have an ACC team going against some Schmenck Conference team like Drake that nobody ever heard of. So interesting. The number 1 seeds, as I said, really not a lot of controversy there. Alabama, Purdue, Kansas, also with Houston as number 1 seeds. Houston is in the Canes bracket. In fact, the Canes bracket contains some really dangerous teams, does it not? I guess they all do. But they also have in that bracket, the winner goes against Indiana, probably, who takes on Kent State in a 4 versus 13 game. The winner of the Miami game against Drake. And then also in the bracket, you have Texas as the number 2 seed, Xavier, which was a highly regarded team, as the number 3 seed. So a lot to get by in the Midwest for the University of Miami Hurricanes. A couple of quick things. World Baseball Classic. I have to admit, I don't really follow it that closely. But how the bleep does Mexico beat the snot out of the United States? We invented the game. It's our game. Our game. We invented it. Did we not?
we did.
Baseball, right? Was Abner Doubleday a man? There's some
think.
controversy about that. Now they want to take that away from him, just like they buried the statue of Kate Smith for some atrocity that she supposedly committed in 1930 after, she'd been singing the God Bless America thing to spark the Philadelphia Flyers for years, for centuries. Took her statue right down there as if she was some Southern Army general. Unbelievable. But nonetheless, as you look at the World Baseball, how do we lose it to a team? Holy Fernando Valenzuela. Did he pitch Valenzuela in his game for Mexico?
I don't think so.
Well, we're having to face the Scroogey. I hope not. But anyway, one thing that we see, and I don't know what to make of this, that they sell out. I mean, it's standing room only with guys with trumpets and tubas and trombones, and they're all playing tambourines and music, and the whole thing is rocking. If every Marlins game had that atmosphere,
Oh,
you
good.
you would go every night. It would be almost impossible to get tickets to these games. But it shows you that I guess you can draw a crowd for baseball here in South Florida, and that's about it. Because I think the 2-day attendance at Lone Shark Park eclipsed probably what will be the first 3 months of attendance for the Marlins once they get going in the regular season. They had 70,000 people total, or 75. And, that's a big number for us to draw here in South Florida. We haven't seen what? I think it took to the All-Star game to get 75,000 people there last year for Marlins baseball. All right. And why would you go to me anyway for any kind of bracket anticipation? Jim Sarney was, saying, hey, you're going to pick your Final Four. It's like, I can't pick my nose right now, Jim. I took Scotty Scheffler and I put him behind Rory McIlroy, and that only cost me 32 shots in my golf pool that I was in. Unbelievable. A 32-shot difference. Scheffler wins at 18 under.
Oh, he didn't win the tournament?
He won!
Oh, Defo.
Oh, my God. Ran away with it, too. I mean, it was over. If you tuned in, I don't mind falling asleep to the back nine of whatever tournament's being played on the CBS or NBC. Players' Championship's always fun because there's always a ball or two that could go in the water from the same player at 17. So, every lead is somewhat tenuous. There are a lot of other hazardous holes there on the back nine. But they basically brought the TPC, the Sawgrass course to its knees. And 18 under for Scotty Scheffler. And the final total with the 6 strokes added for missing the cut to Rory McIlroy, what would have been plus 14, my friend. 32 shots. How could you come to me for advice, people? And that's why we're getting out of here. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Defo on 5. Catch us on South Florida Live and various other sources, including some snippets that appear here on 5 Reasons Sports Network for the next edition of the Defo Show. Cranks up 7 to 9 this morning, and we will see you then. And, of course, happy you guys are tuning in. Are we still generating some buzz there on the Twitter feed? Yeah? No?
And they retweet it.
Okay.
Happen, but yes, it's working its way through. We're figuring it out.
Good. And it keeps getting longer. So we told Scoop 15 minutes. All right. We'll see you next time on Defo on 5. We'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. For Mike Lubie, I'm Jeff DeForest. Let's go get them. Hurricanes over Drake. Let's hope we can survive that first round game.